Sawa Barataria and the shadow with responsibility for national security and the Office of the Attorney General will focus on a nation with no future under the People's National Movement government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. On behalf of our opposition leader, the political leader of the United National Congress, and my colleagues and membership of our great party, the UNC, we take the opportunity to extend Shubh Diwali greetings to not only the Hindu community but the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because crime continues to run rampant in this country. Criminals are being defiant to the name of God, and the government of Dr. Rowley has been unable to stem this growing culture of criminality which has continued to impact upon places of worship throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is our hope that despite the darkness that is currently prevailing in Trinidad and Tobago, that the people of this country will enjoy light during this Diwali period in their respective hearts and homes. And it is our hope that during this Diwali, that the government, through the Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzalez, will stop their conveniently lowering the water supply and ensure that all of Trinidad and Tobago could have a supply of pipe-borne water for their Diwali preparation and prayers. So without further ado, I want to invite my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Sawa Barataria, to address you here this morning on a number of pertinent issues as it relates to national security, which may overlap into the Office of the Attorney General.
Thank you very much, MP Rudranath Indarsingh, the Member of Parliament for the constituency of Cooper South. I also would like to take the opportunity to welcome each and every one of you joining us here on our weekly Sunday morning press conference hosted under the Office of the Opposition Leader, the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa of Senior Counsel, and members of the media, those who have joined us physically and both on the social media platforms. This morning I have some very pertinent issues, as MP Indarsingh stated, with respect to national security. And in brief and in summary, I will just inform you of the topics in which I will be addressing. The first will be issues in relation to human trafficking. The second will be the electronic monitoring unit. The third issue will be with respect to the calling out of the Army to supplement the TTPS. And the last issue will be issues in relation to the Witness Protection Program. So as I begin, I start off with addressing you on the issues of human trafficking. Under the People's Partnership Government, we had passed a very significant piece of law in the Parliament called the Trafficking in Persons Act of 2011. And that piece of legislation was a remarkable piece of legislation as it created offenses in relation to human trafficking, establishment of the counter-trafficking unit, so that we can properly deal with transnational crimes and offenses, especially as it relates to the victims of those offenses, who most of the time are women and young girls who are trafficked for various reasons all over the world, and Trinidad and Tobago is not spared from that. And we have passed that law in 2011. And up until 2023, there has been no proper trials and or convictions and or sentence for that offense of human trafficking. Until recently, a couple days ago, the judiciary confirmed that one individual was in fact convicted, but he can't be found. But before I go there, because I would like to address you on that issue a little more, I just want to focus on where we are with respect to our compliance and ranking when it comes to human trafficking. Under the 2023 Trafficking in Persons Report, Trinidad and Tobago from the U.S. Department of State, Trinidad and Tobago, under this Rowley regime, has placed us on the Tier 2 watch list. So there are three ranks. There's the Tier 1, the Tier 2, the Tier 2 watch list, and then you have the Tier 3 watch list. So we are almost at the end of that list. And if you read the U.S. report, it goes through several issues and recommendations that the government ought to have taken into consideration in order to be compliant with the international standards as it relates to trafficking in persons. And one of those were, in fact, that they have identified or flagged that a court have never convicted a trafficker under the 2011 anti-trafficking law. And the report goes into detail to explain why and the steps that we have to take. So in fact, the government don't even need to come up with the policy. The report itself tells them what to do. So it's not that they have to use their brain power, which they have limited resources in. The report actually tells them what they have to do. And if you read this report carefully, you will see that Trinidad and Tobago was threatened by the U.S. to have us downgraded to Tier 3. In the report, it confirms that Trinidad and Tobago was granted a waiver from an otherwise required downgrade to Tier 3, which meant that they were getting these reports year after year after year, shelving these reports and doing absolutely nothing about human trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago. So because they were threatened to downgrade us in 2023, quickly establishment of a special court was done in or around January 2023 with respect to sexual offences and trafficking in persons matter. And this was gazetted in the Gazette number 62, dated the 22nd of January 2023. I have a copy of the practice direction issued here for the establishment of special criminal courts for sexual offences and trafficking in persons matter. So that's where we are. So the first point is that this government really doesn't care about the victims of human trafficking. They don't even care about convicting anyone until the U.S. threatened us that they are going to downgrade us. Had the U.S. not threatened us, you would have never seen anything happening. But gratefully, we are seeing the first conviction. And a judiciary media release dated the 3rd of November 2023 confirmed first conviction under the Trafficking in Persons Act. On the 2nd of November 2023, a jury returned a unanimous verdict of guilty, convicting Anthony Smith on all 5 counts of trafficking of a child. And this matter was presided by the Honorable Mr. Justice Geoffrey Henderson. And the media release goes on to talk about the experiences of this child. A 16-year-old girl was trafficked by this, according to the findings of the court, by Anthony Smith as a sex worker in the most outrageous and disgusting manner. We have seen a young 16-year-old girl in this country of Trinidad and Tobago being trafficked, working in a bar, being sold for sex at hotels, subjected to physical, emotional abuse. And then it was not until 2015 that the matter there was discovery made because passports were left behind in the place that she was staying. And it took them 8 years to bring this matter to court after 2015, the man being arrested. In 2023, we have now seen the trial having been completed. That is totally unacceptable in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the delay in bringing these matters to justice. A 16-year-old girl who today should have had justice due to the incompetence of this government and the Minister of National Security is probably fearful for her life because this man who was escaped from custody by cutting off the electronic monitoring bracelet is at large. We don't know where he is. Of course, the evidence of this young woman would have been one of the would have been the crux of his conviction, and today that man is at large. We call upon this government to ensure that that young girl, that victim, is protected, because they, through their incompetence, has caused this man to run free because of the devices. And I'll get to that. I'll get to why I'm saying that, because you will understand the types of devices that are being procured and used currently by the Ministry of National Security under this electronic monitoring unit and program. So that is with respect to that particular matter. I want to go a bit into the Trafficking in Persons Act law now, because Minister Hines, as incompetent as he is also in breach of the law. Under Section 45 of the Trafficking in Persons Act, he has, within 3 months of the end of each year, to lay an annual report on trafficking in persons in Trinidad and Tobago for that year. And this report must include the numbers of victims identified, the numbers of investigation initiated, the number of arrests made, the numbers of prosecution commenced and the outcome, and any pertinent matter which the minister considers necessary. These reports were laid, the last report was laid in 2015. The minister has breached the law. He's acting in an illegal manner, as they have not laid any annual report on trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago for the years 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. He's in breach of the law, and he must be called to answer. We recently took the Minister of Finance to court for the failure to lay the NIB reports, where he admitted that he had failed to do so, and he was guilty of that breach. Today, we are saying to Minister Hines that if you do not lay these reports, we will find you in the courthouse. We will find you in the courthouse. You can run, but you cannot hide. You cannot breach the law in such flagrant disregard for various acts of parliament that has been established, that you have statutory obligations in which you must comply with. Now, with respect to the breaches of the Trafficking in Persons Act, I want to move on directly now to the issues in relation to the electronic monitoring bracelet. Because as we have the facts, first conviction, November 2023. First conviction, first day of trial, the person attended, Mr. Anthony Smith. The second day of trial, he would have removed the bracelet and did not attend court. He is at large now. This is confirmed by the Ministry of National Security through a press conference that was held, I believe, on Friday afternoon. And, you know, Minister Hines, I don't think we can find a greater idiot than Mr. Hines. That man came to the nation and boasted that we have our first conviction of human trafficking, but we can't find the person. This ought to be a watershed day in Trinidad and Tobago, a landmark day in which we send a strong message not only to Trinidad and Tobago, but the international community, that we are serious about this issue of human trafficking. That we are serious. Then he comes on a press conference and says, look, the man is convicted for 15 years, but you know what? We can't find him. We can't find him. Why we can't find him? Because he was subjected to the electronic monitoring unit, and the bracelet was eventually removed, and they can't find him. That is confirmed through the Ministry of National Security. Now, let's go into the history of this particular unit. The electronic monitoring unit, or what we call the monitoring bracelets, the electronic monitoring bracelets, was enacted through an act of parliament passed by the People's Partnership Government, again in 2011, under the Administration of Justice Electronic Monitoring Act. We passed that law in 2011. We left government in 2015. It took them until 2020 to have that unit up and running, and in 2021 to have the first person placed with that particular bracelet. And I know they will come to say it's not their fault because it's the court who makes the order to put the bracelets. Fine. But it's not the court's responsibility to procure the bracelets. So let's make one clear distinction with that. In a media release or a press conference Minister Hines had, let's go to some history. On the 23rd of July 2021, Minister Hines, in a Newsday article, confirmed that the electronic bracelet system for offenders is up and running. 2021, April of 2021. And he's saying that the system used is state-of-the-art technology to track the movement of offenders. He has confirmed to the nation in 21, we are using state-of-the-art technology that they could monitor people in low areas of GPS and high areas of GPS and cell units and cell towers. All of that nice things he's talking about, that listen, we have state-of-the-art technology. State-of-the-art technology, April 2021. 7 months later, I have in my possession an affidavit sworn by the acting permanent secretary of the Ministry of National Security saying this about the electronic monitoring unit. And this is an affidavit that was sworn in the Achille Charles matter. This is the affidavit of Gary Joseph, 7 months after Minister Hines made that statement. And at paragraph 6 of the affidavit, this is what the PS is telling the court. The EMU, meaning the Electronic Monitoring Unit, began its operation in April 2020, the first offender being placed on the program in April 2021. At paragraph 7, staffing considerations. On the critical issue of staffing, it must be noted that the staffing levels are inadequate even for the unit's current workload, a situation that has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 issues. He then says that the system requires staff to undertake site visits to where persons reside and undertaking fittings as necessary in the existing high-risk environment. The PS goes on to say the resources of the unit have been stretched from the very inception. He then goes on to talk about the suitability of the equipment and the bracelets. He said the EMU, listen to this very carefully, this is the PS saying this on affidavit. The EMU currently has no equipment of the type required for the safe and effective monitoring of an accused and or offender at the level identified in the judgment. And the judgment talks about murderers. And human trafficking is the same thing. Those are high-risk offenders. He then goes on to say, consequently, the monitoring devices acquired and currently in use for the program do not meet the criteria that is required for such offenders and are suited for a lower threshold of accused and or offenders. 7 months ago, Minister Hines saying we're using state-of-the-art technology. 7 months later, the PS of the ministry is telling us that they don't have the proper devices to outfit for high-risk offenders. They don't have the devices. Fast forward, 18th of May 2023, Mr. Lawrence Hines, and this is Lawrence Hines here. This is the man in charge of the Electronic Monitoring Unit at the Ministry of National Security, confirming that the ministry's Electronic Monitoring Unit gets more equipment. Well, I don't know if I should be happy or sad about that statement, because if the PS has just told us that the devices that they have are not suitable, I can only imagine the devices that they have procured. They cannot buy wooden ladders in this country, but are trying to procure high sophisticated equipment such as electronic monitoring bracelets. He said that the equipment was cleared by customs this morning and delivered to the office this afternoon and will be doing an audit to put them into the inventory. So this is what they're saying, that these devices are in fact procured by the Ministry of National Security. The PS is saying that the devices are unsuitable. We have a case now before us where it is confirmed that the man who has been convicted, Anthony Smith, has removed the bracelet and the police could not have found him. They couldn't have detected him. And when we heard this, all of us were astounded. We were shocked by this revelation because we welcomed that conviction in terms of someone being brought to justice for what that person would have done to that very young girl. That was the subject of that particular matter. So I just want to segue, and I saw a post on social media where they said Minister Hines basically called a press conference to say that he won the lotto, but he lost the ticket.
I saw numerous posts.
Numerous posts on that. He won the lotto, but he lost the ticket. So this is the issue with respect to the bracelets. Now, when we heard this, one would have thought that, listen, this is probably the first time an incident like this happened. Members of the media, I have in my possession something called a director's response to a court order dated November 28, 2022, in terms of the suitability of an electronic monitoring device on a particular individual. So let me just explain how this report was generated. If the court, if there's a matter before court in terms of seeking bail or so, the director of the unit, the electronic monitoring unit, will do the proper investigation and then present a report to the court to determine whether or not the person is suitable to be outfitted with an electronic monitoring bracelet. And when you look at this report, it is in fact astounding when you read this report. And I want to read page 3 of the report for you at paragraph 9. And it's confirming here again, and it's actually in bold. Consequently, the monitoring devices acquired and currently in use for the program do not meet the criteria that is required for such offenders and are suited for a lower threshold of the accused offenders. November 2022. This is what it says. This was very, very shocking. The EMU has experienced one offender who successfully breached the system by cutting the strap off the device, and despite quick action by the TTPS, is still at large. So they are confirming to us now that something like this happened in the past and nothing was done. The report goes further. It says, fortunately, the incident has not been reported in the media. Fortunately, this is what the report says. Fortunately, the incident has not been reported in the media. Any such negative press will only serve to undermine the integrity of the system. Is Trinidad and Tobago a banana republic? If something like this happened, they should have plastered the entire place with this person's photograph so that they can inform the police officer. If you see this person, say something, give a tip or so. I could remember a couple of weeks ago the Prime Minister coming to the Parliament to say that he wants to introduce a law to put up everybody's picture. If you're an offender or they're looking for you in the papers or social media to find you. But here, the electronic monitoring unit is saying, fortunately, the members of the media didn't know about this, because this would have given us negative press. A man or a woman or whoever, the offender, cut the straps of a device sometime in 2022, and nothing was done. The country did not know about that particular issue. But one person would have known, and the person who would have known at all material times would have been the Minister of National Security. He would have known that these devices can easily be tampered with. Because if that person did it then, and then Mr. Anthony Smith is doing it now, therefore, there must be some issues with respect to the quality of those devices, because those are sophisticated devices. In other parts of the world that they are used, the straps may be metal straps or straps of a particular material or quality which cannot be easily tampered with or removed. So we now have to ask, who are the providers of these devices? What type of material is being used? Are they up to international standards? Where did you buy these devices? Because this is not the first time that this has happened. This is now the second time that we know of where a device has been removed with respect to a person who is under the electronic monitoring system. This is not the first time. What did Minister Hines do after knowing about this? And we must also look at the response of the TTPS, because integrated within the law, once you get a hit with respect to the tampering of these bracelets, or if the battery runs low, or there's a weak signal with these bracelets, the police officers ought to have immediately responded to these particular incidents. So now what we have seen is that the entire electronic monitoring unit at the Ministry of National Security is now compromised. It is now compromised. And today we call on Minister Hines. Well, in fact, I call on Minister Hines today to be fired. To be fired, absolutely fired. They should be sent home. Imagine there's such a grave security breach in this country, and you are allowed to go to work on Monday morning and draw a salary at the end of the month. That will never happen in any other properly functioning government or any democratic state. It shows that this is a sordid affair and it is rotting from the top. Heads must roll in this scandal. The fish is rotting from the head. Imagine there's a 15-year-old project now being investigated by a Joint Select Committee of the Parliament. Today we call on an emergency session of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, holding before it the Electronic Monitoring Unit, Minister Hines and Earl Christopher Harewood, to answer these questions with respect to this grave security breach that has taken place in our country of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to this man who is convicted of human trafficking being at large because he was able to remove that bracelet. What is that they're putting on people's foot? A dog collar? Is a dog collar? A potong could probably bite out that electronic bracelet. Come on, we have been spending billions of dollars on national security, and today you can tell us that these devices can easily be removed from offenders? The permanent secretary of the ministry, the minister, all of them ought to have known that these devices can be removed easily, and all of them must be called to account. They must be hauled before the parliament in order to account for this entire scandal that has taken place in our country, because it does not augur well. It sends a very embarrassing message to the international community and damages our reputation when it comes to these particular matters. Damages our reputation. The next issue I would like to move on to is with respect to the government's decision to call out to duty 100 members of the Trinidad and Tobago Volunteer Defense Force to strengthen the TTDF in terms of the joint support for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in provision of a safe and secure to keep environment during the pre-Christmas season to the 2024 Carnival period. You know, we can say a lot about this. Crime does not have a season. In fact, we have seen 8 murders over one weekend past. We have seen hundreds of home invasions. We should have had already called out all hands on deck long time ago. Why only for shopping and fetting? None of us are safe at no point in time of the year. Call out all resources to really fight these criminals. We are at war with the criminals and we need to win this war. And it seems as though the Prime Minister, who always likes to boast he is the head of the National Security Council, has washed his hands off of this issue and now threw it to an incompetent Minister, Fitzgerald Hines. I mean, that is a total abdication of responsibility and duty for you to have delegated the responsibilities of our nation's safety to one of the most incompetent ministers of national security in our entire history, Fitzgerald Hines. But this bill, this particular calling out proclamation was done by Her Excellency the President on the advice of Cabinet. So it called out the people for fetting season and shopping and whatever. We're happy, but let the army and all the other resources of national security protect us all year round. Because our citizens are dying, we are not safe. But it seems as though there's now a policy shift. Because when we were in government, we had proposed a soldier bill into the parliament, allowing the members of the Defence Force certain privileges and immunities. And I want to quote from Hansard, dated the 2nd of April 2013, when Senator then Fitzgerald Hines was contributing to the debate. And this is what he says. He says, when I was in the police service and we worked together with soldiers, we used to call them soldiers. Well, a Rastaman told me yesterday, but Brother Hines, they want to bring solis. He calls them solis. Making fun of very serious departments and establishments and arms of national security when he was in opposition in 2013, but today has to implement our policy with respect to keeping citizens safe. Imagine if this bill was passed since 2013, Trinidad and Tobago would have been a safer place for all of us. For all of us. So Minister Hines is a total failure, and he must be fired. He must be fired. I don't understand if he holds something over the Prime Minister's head, but the Prime Minister seems as though to have protected Minister Hines. And then one of the other issues I would like to move on to is this article here in the Sunday Express. Amid troubling conditions in protective custody, high-profile state witness walks out. Now, this is a troubling article, because when you look at this article, it talks about a state witness who was in a safe house for almost 10 years, had to then spend more than a month in a police station dormitory with her daughter, and then she had to flee. Imagine this person was willing to give evidence in a murder trial, waiting for 10 years to testify under witness protection, and today she had to flee because of the conditions of the witness protection. It was Kamla Prasad Bisesa who had raised issues of witness protection since she had met with Dr. Rowley when he first became Prime Minister in or around 2016. And she would have issued letters with respect to low-hanging fruits to protect these witnesses and provide them with adequate care and resources in the witness protection program. But the government, as usual, ignored those pleas. And today, this is what we have to see. Again, embarrassing. They simply do not care. Imagine, this is what the article says, that in the place that they were staying, the mother and the daughter was getting pungent odors. She said that fumes were coming from the ceiling when it's wet, together with mold causing health issues. She said, I was also informed that there were bats or rats in the ceiling, as the officers and I had observed rats running on the house roof. There were areas in the ceiling that could cave in at any time. There were issues with respect to food in terms of where she was allowed to cook. And when she got frustrated and could not stay in that particular safe house anymore, she then moved to the police dormitory. And this is what the article goes on to say. She said she stayed in the dormitory for just over 1 month. She had to buy a cooler and 3 storage bins to store foodstuff, as no meals were catered for us. I also had to cook on the floor of the dormitory and hang out wet clothes in the same room to dry. My daughter was unable to write chemistry and biology exams and now has to repeat another year. She is 13 but started writing CXC. She claimed that over the next month she was berated and nagged by several senior officers at the location to leave the police station where she was seeking refuge. And that again shows that this government blatantly does not care about the criminal justice system, and they just don't care about anybody else. Had it been their friends, their families, and their financiers, they would have immediately stepped in. And then the last point is that there's an article in today's newspaper, the Newsday, where a pensioner's pistol seized after shots fired to scare suspected bandits. A 69-year-old pensioner would have fired shots in relation to persons who he believed would have been alighting from a car when his wife was going to pull in the driveway to scare them off. And they in fact were scared off. And then went to the police station and reported the incident. And the police took his firearm. I mean, is the PNM cutting track for Guti to run? A law-abiding citizen who had a firearm, had that man had no firearm, the consequences or the results would have been different. Today he is left without his firearm. We call upon Earl Christopher to immediately intervene in this matter, because under the law, you have the sole jurisdiction with respect to revoking, granting, or varying firearm user's license. This is a travesty of justice for them to have taken away this pensioner's firearm, which he used to protect his wife, his property, and himself. So I thank you very much, members of the media.
Thank you very much, MP Saddam Hosein. Oh, what a sad state of affairs that continues to exist at the Ministry of National Security under Minister Fitzgerald Hines. And this morning I want to concentrate on a couple of issues that are in the public domain, especially that issue at TSTT and the data breach, the issue of the back pay fiasco, bacchanal, which is now in the public domain, and also the Regulated Industry Commission's recommendations as it relates to the increase or the impending increase as it relates to residential and commercial rates for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, it is very clear that the government of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has collapsed. The government cannot protect you and your families. Law and order has broken down. The blood of our sons and daughters continue to spill with impunity. Murders are the order of the day, home invasions, robberies, rapes, and so on. And the citizens can no longer protect your motor vehicle from wear and tear, burst tires, bent rims, damaged ends. Citizens have died. Families have been plunged into mourning because motorists, passengers, motorcyclists have died avoiding potholes on our roadways and highways. The health system has collapsed. The economy has collapsed. And the latest fiasco is that the government cannot protect your personal data. And in this regard, you see, we will continue to prosecute and call them out on this big TSTT leak and customers' email addresses, ID numbers, phone numbers dumped on the dark web in this cyber attack. And today, we are being told by the Minister of Public Utilities that the Minister orders an independent investigation into TSTT data breach. And to understand where we are, you have to understand or go to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the Hansard. And on the 8th of not on the 8th, but on the 1st of November 2023, there was a sitting of the House of Representatives. And there was an urgent question posed by my colleague, the member for Couva North, to the Minister of Public Utilities. Given the recent confirmation of a cyber attack on TSTT, will the Minister state what measures have been put in place to prevent further attacks? And I took the opportunity to follow up with a supplemental question to the Minister, and that was, Mr. Minister, in March of 2022, you stated there was a malware incursion at TSTT in March of 2022, and at no time, no data was compromised. Could you inform this House, based on the recent cyber attack, if any of TSTT's data and so on was compromised? And the Minister responded by saying, "Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can advise the honorable member that based on safety protocols that were triggered when the incursion was detected, that TSTT's data and the data of its customers were not in any way compromised." This is playing smart with foolishness even in his response, because the issue was breach. Whether the data was breached or not, it was not whether it was compromised. This was what we were trying to find out. And I further followed up, Minister, could you indicate to this House whether the Newsday wrongly misquoted you when you indicated claims of a ransom attack on TSTT were not true? And the Minister responded by saying, I will not respond to a report by the Newsday. I have not read it, and therefore I am not prepared to provide any clarification, but I'm not responding to this report. I did not make this statement. The minister responded to the Newsday report and told the Newsday reporter, the inquiry, that there was no attack. And today, in the Guardian newspaper, and I want to quote, because he has ordered an independent investigation into TSTT data breach. And he explained, and that is the minister, he explained that he relied on the information provided by TSTT when he told the Parliament that last week that customers' data was not breached by their cyber attack. Based on the security protocols that were triggered when the incursion was detected, TST's data and the data of its customers were not in any way compromised, the minister told the Parliament. And this is not the minister relying on information by TSTT. This is the minister deliberately misleading the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is an issue of not relying, it is an issue of lying to the Parliament and lying to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And there seems to be a common thread amongst this entire cabinet, led by the Prime Minister, where they seem to have an addiction. They are addicted. They cannot help themselves, but they have emerged to be pathological liars. They continue to mislead. They continue to deceive the population of this country. And today, we in the UNC, we have to ask the question, after Minister Marvin Gonzalez was caught with his pants down as it relates to his explanation and so on, why did the minister provide this false information to the country? Why did the minister did not admit that there was a cyber attack? Why was the minister trying to contradict or suppress what was issued by the telecommunication services of Trinidad and Tobago? Did the minister receive instructions from the Prime Minister or anybody else to cover up this cyber attack and deny that there was any? And you see, the entire board of TSTT, and in this instance, the government has the majority shareholding, but Mr. Sean Roach, the chairman, Lisa Agard, and we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kamal Georges, the senior manager of environmental, social, and reputation risk or reputation. They must continue to end this foolishness and skirting around the issue and so on, because they have failed TSTT. TSTT is in chaos. There is confusion. There is mayhem existing. We must never forget that the alarming acquisition of a financially beleaguered company, Massey Technologies, by TSTT for $255 million. TSTT sent home workers in 2018, 503, and 51 more. And then they sent home 466 workers in 2022. Today, nobody knows what is the true compensation package of